I provided for Oahspe glossary. And there's the definition of Dan, light, cyclic dawn, and subcycles of Dan, and so on and so forth. And here's the OSPStandardEdition.com glossary. This is a combined 1882 and 1891 glossaries from Oahspe. Scrolling down, we see the definition of Savorcum, the roadway of the solar phalanx, also spelled different ways. Literally meaning the place and direction of the chief vortex, the orbit of the sun with its family of planets or its place in that orbit. And then the definition of Dan, and so on and so forth. And you click again, and you come to the next words in the glossary, and there's the High Dan Sun, North Star, High Dan Vortex, the vortex of the North Star, and so on and so forth. Scrolling back up, and I'm going to go to another page. But before I do, I'm going to go over verses that prove Orachnebuahgalah is for Cosmon in the future. Oahspe Book of Knowledge, Chapter 6. As I said before, coming of Cosmon, and the sons and daughters of Jehovah quicken him. When Te had completed his labors, he made a tablet of events and classified them, and he called the tablet Orachnebuahgalah. But the people called it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics of both evil and good, or the mathematics of war and peace, etc. For example, verse 3, and Ty divided the time of the tablet according to the darkness and the light of the period. Verse 29, let me finish verse 3. And Ty divided the time of the tablet according to the darkness and light of the period, and for 400 years prior, and it was in all 3,400 years. Verse 29, and Ty took the histories of men from the time of Moses to Cosmon, and for the periods of war and destruction he made one place, and for the periods of peace and goodwill amongst men he made another place. For he saw that the actions and behaviors of nations were governed largely by the unseen worlds around them. These formed a map of light and darkness as it had been for 3,400 years, and this became as a key to unlock the past and a base to foretell the future, which is what the Orachnebuahgalah plate is. It shows the periods of war and destruction, periods of peace and goodwill, and a map of light and darkness. The two dates used as a key to unlock the past, 1553 BCE BCE and a base to foretell the future, 1848, from 1553 BCE to 1848 equals 3,400 years. Verse 2 says, TAE collected histories from the Ark of Bond to the coming of Cosmon. Verse 29 says, TAE took the histories of men from the time of Moses to Cosmon. Both verses above in the time of the tablet according to the darkness and light of the period. Verse 29 says, for the periods of peace and goodwill amongst men, he made another place. These formed a map of light and darkness. Both verses above in the same chapter are talking about the same thing. Again, that's referring to the Orachnebuahgalah plate. Now add the last words of verse 29 and you get the proof the Orachnebuahgalah is for Cosmon. Verse 29 says, and this became as a key to unlock the past and a base to foretell the future. You can click on that link and that will take you to the Book of Knowledge from sacredtext.com. And you can read what I just said. Now the other proof is the fact that the Orachnebuahgalah is mentioned in the chapter 7 of the Book of Cosmology and Prophecy. Prophecy is referring to the future and Cosmon. Oahspe Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, chapter 7, verse 16. It is not the purpose of these revelations to work out prophecies, leaving nothing for man to do, but to call his attention to the unseen forces that rule on the earth and show him the way to make the prophecies himself. Verse 16 tells you the purpose of why the Orachnebuahgalah is being revealed in the Book of Cosmology and Prophecy. Verse 16 says, show him the way to make the prophecies himself. Make the prophecies himself is referring to using the Orachnebuahgalah to prophesy about Cosmon. That's why the very next verse it talks about the Orachnebuahgalah, verse 17, in Orachnebuahgalah. Verse 18, these periods will be found to come under certain numbers: 11, 33, 66, 99, 100, 200, 400, 666, 333, 666, 18, 500, 600, 365, 99, 33, 18, and so on. Not that the numbers as such have anything to do with such matters. These periods of light and darkness, or Aji and Dan, come under certain numbers that are listed above and on the Orachnebuahgalah tablet. The numbers don't cause the events to happen. It is the periods of light, Dan, and darkness, nebulous regions of Aji, that the earth passes through as it travels in the galaxy, that cause the historical manifestations on earth. In Oahspe Book of Knowledge, chapter tablet of events, and classified them. And as I said before, but the people called it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics of both evil and good. Verse 2 says, the people call it the tablet of prophecy, signifying the mathematics. It wouldn't be called the tablet of prophecy if it only referred to the Ark of Bond, which was a previous ark cycle in the past. It is called the tablet of prophecy because its mathematics also refers to Cosmon, this present ark cycle that we're in, and the future. TAE, demonstrated how the Orachnebuahgalah applied to Cosmon and the future. That's why the people called it the tablet of prophecy and the mathematics of both evil and good. So those are the verses in Oahspe that prove that the Orachnebuahgalah is for this present cycle we're going through and for the future. Now this is from studyofOSP.com, Orachnebuahgalah charts, cycles, and prophecy page. Now right there you see a couple plates, images from Oahspe that show this one on the left, the Earth in Oahspe, plate 32, and plate 94, Ark of Cosmon, Earth in Danha. Now Oahspe is a cold, nebulous substance in outer space that the Earth periodically passes through. Dan is a light region in outer space that the Earth periodically passes through. Oahspe stimulates man's physical attributes and desires. Dan stimulates man's spiritual attributes and desires. Now this I've read before, so I'll skip through this. And the mathematicians foretold the great cities and nations that would rise up, how this one and that one would move to battle, how the great cities would fall in ruins and be covered up by falling nebulae, and by denuding mountains washing down upon them, so that even their remembrance should be lost. And yet further on, the mathematicians foretold the coming of Cosmon. Verse 14, and now when all these things were estimated, the prophets and mathematicians went before God according to the commandments of the Lord, and they spake before God, Son of Jehovah, telling all these wonders. So these verses show how a mathematician is like a prophet, using mathematics to foretell the future. Page 39 of Time of the Quickening by Susan B. Martinez, Ph.D., published in 2011, it says, in both Egypt and Mesoamerica, in Africa and in Central America, mathematician and seer alike stood as equals in the prophecy enterprise. One was trained to analyze data and applied the prophetic numbers. That would be the mathematician. Two types of prophecy from Oahspe, Book of Cosmogonian Prophecy. Two types of prophecy. One, prophecy using rules or calculations equals Orachnebuahgalah plate, chapter 7. Two, prophecy without rules or calculations using suis and eth senses, which would be your psychic abilities. He, she prophesieth in the last method without rules or calculations. Number 2, chapter 10. Oahspe Book of Cosmogonian Prophecy, chapter 10, verse 3. These creatures prophesied by the direct action of vortexian currents upon them. They feel what is approaching because the unseen cause is already upon them. That's talking about how certain animals can know things in the future that are about to happen. Verse 4. Man can learn to acquire this same kind of prophecy calculations, meaning without mathematics, is different from the prophecy hereinbefore mentioned, because he prophesieth in the last method without rules or calculations. The prophecy hereinbefore mentioned equals rules or calculations, equals mathematical rules and numbers of prophecy and calculations, equals Orachnebuahgalah plate of chapter 7, which was mentioned before chapter 10. Attainment in both suis and eth, or the ability to hear the voice of the Creator or use your psychic senses, your non-physical senses, is not required. Do not have to use his or her eth sense when using the rules of prophecy and mathematical calculations of the Orachnebuahgalah plate. Using eth sense can come into play when deciphering the Orachnebuahgalah plate and its meaning, but not in doing the mathematical calculations or using the rules of prophecy. And that's where being a mathematician is different than a seer. But they stood as equals, as Susan B. Martinez said in her book, stood as equals in the prophecy enterprise. Oahspe Book of Osiris, son of Jehovah, chapter 12, verse 3. And he gave the times of Jehovah, and the base of prophecy, the variations of 33 years, the times of 11, and the 7.5 times of the vortices of the stars, so that the seasons might be foretold, and famines averted on the earth. Verse 4, when the tablets, prophecy tablets, were completed and ready to deliver to the lords, Osiris said, take these and bestow them on mortals, both through the oracles and by inspiration, making them sacred with the prophets. So these prophecy tablets it is referring to there in the book of Osiris, son of Jehovah, is referring to tablets, prophecy tablets like the Orachnebuahgalah tablet in Oahspe. Now, a mortal, a human person, can receive 133 years shall he serve as an Ashar, and he shall learn to have dominion over his mortal proteges, night and day, not suffering them, however, to know his presence, to accomplish which he shall begin with his proteges in their first infancy. Remaining with them whilst they sleep, talking to the spirit of the mortal, teaching and persuading. On page 108 of The Hidden Prophet, The Life of Dr. John Ballou Newborough by Susan B. Martinez, Ph.D., it says, we had no control over you, but merely passed intellectual light before you. It is most probable you thought to yourself that a new thought struck you, which is a common reaction by reflecting people to the new ideas which they receive from spirits. And scrolling down, this is stuff that I've shown in previous videos. Now, here it says right here, in regards to prophecy, it says right here, Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, chapter 9, verse 10. Herb food for man cultivateth the negative condition. Flesh food for man increaseth the positive, which is to say, flesh food carrieth man away from prophecy, away from spirituality. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, chapter 10, verse 5. To attain this kind of study the action of unseen forces upon himself, introspection. To eat not fish, nor flesh, nor any food that cometh of animals. To bathe daily. To permit no passion to enter his mind. To abnegate self, and to wed himself to the Creator for righteousness' sake. And to do good, to discipline his mind, to remain in any given direction on any subject, for days if necessary, to become oblivious to pain, after which he shall receive anointed from one who had previously attained the seership. Years of discipline and age also play a factor in prophecy. Being age 50 or over, like Caillou, Confucius, John Newborough, and Walter Russell, for examples. Oahspe Book of Knowledge, Spirit Verse, Prophecy Grades, all below 50 years of age are considered minors as to spirit. And there's a link I provide. Where you can read that. And on that page of that link, it has the Tablet of Prophecy on the left there, the Orachnebuahgalah plate right there. And the Orachnebuahgalah Tablet of Prophecy, which is part 4 or chapter 4 of the Book of Knowledge. In my own experience, after 21 years of becoming a vegetarian at age 50, I was inspired to begin and complete work, or to work on the prophecy plates and tables or tablets of Oahspe, plus I did many drawings, equations, mathematics, and research articles. And now right here, I write, to decipher the Orachnebuahgalah plate, you have to show the historical manifestations that match the numbers and words on the plate, and you have to know the base to apply the numbers to get a historical or prophetic manifestation. Yeah, I'm going to scroll back up.